Hello everyone, and welcome to the 18th and final video in the Safe Passage series. For those of you who have been following along, I want to thank you once again for your interest and your support. And thank you for accompanying me on what has turned out to be a trip down memory lane. I'd like to start today by taking you back to last week's video, where I described a scene that I viewed every morning one winter in Fairhope, Alabama, when I would go to the end of the pier and watch the sunrise. So I thought we could start together by your imagining that you are there with me. And every morning I would start in a kind of ceremonial way with a poem and then play some beautiful music. I often chose The Lord's Prayer by Jackie Evancho. It's so beautiful if you've never listened to it yet. And then I would have a meditation and then allow myself to watch the sunrise in the reflective state that I always enjoyed it. So I'm going to start with a poem by Chief Dan George. Many of you may know that he was a writer, an actor, and the chief of a nation in the Burrard Inlet in British Columbia. And he wrote this: "O great Spirit, whose voice I hear in the wind, whose breath gives life to the world, hear me. I come to you as one of your many children. I am small and weak. I need your strength and your wisdom. May I walk in beauty. Make my eyes ever behold the red and purple sunset. Make my hands respect the things that you have made, and my ears sharp to hear your voice. Make me wise, that I might know the things you have taught your children, the lessons you have hidden in every leaf and rock. Make me strong, not to be superior to my brothers, but to be able to fight my greatest enemy, myself. Make me ever ready to come to you with straight eyes, so that when life fades as the fading sunset, my spirit will come to you without shame." And on one particular morning, I had a really amazing experience that I'm going to describe to you. But first, you must know that the day before, I had a counseling session with a person who has become a very dear friend of mine, Shirley Gear. And at that time, Shirley was the minister of the Unity congregation in Fairhope, where I always liked to attend. And she was also a registered hypnotherapist. So her sessions were always a wonderful combination of psychological, emotional, and spiritual well-being. And on that particular morning, in a deep state of relaxation, using some of the techniques of that approach, I feel that I came to a very peaceful resolution with my father. And as I mentioned in an earlier video, my father and I did not always see eye to eye. And unfortunately, he died very suddenly of a massive heart attack when he was just 66 years old. And that took away opportunities in this lifetime to resolve a lot of differences. So the next morning I was in a very peaceful state as I approached the pier, very calm, and I was just feeling such a sense of resolution. So I did the poem, I played the music, and in my meditation I heard some splashing at the end of the pier. And that surprised me because the water had seemed particularly calm that day. So I was wondering, did a boat go by somewhere? And when I opened my eyes, the scene took my breath away, because right at the end of the pier was a beautiful dolphin splashing around with great enthusiasm. And I was so startled that by the time I got the video function going on my iPad, it had swum out to meet a pod of dolphins way further out on the bay. And I thought, oh my goodness, I want to get that on video. I have to convince myself that it was real, that I didn't imagine it. So I thought, I wonder if I could set the stage for the next morning. So I did, and the same thing. As I closed my eyes and began to meditate, I heard this familiar splashing sound. So by this time I was ready, and I did get on video a couple minutes of myself talking to this beautiful creature before it did its famous arc dive, and away it went. And that brings me to the topic of perspective, because I really do think our reality is created by our perspective and by our perception. So in my mind, I love to think of that incident as a manifestation of my dad's spirit in some way, taking form in that beautiful creature, just to assure me that all was well, that he was pleased. Now, someone else might think, yes, or it could have been just a curious dolphin coming for a little swim by. But I do know that I mentioned the incident to people who lived in that complex, and the one man said, oh my goodness, my wife is going to be so envious because she really loves dolphins. And we've been here 19 years and we've never seen a dolphin close to the pier. So, but I do think that our perception influences everything. And I'm going to read to you some material from that CD, the Carpe Diem Chronicles, that I was describing last video. As a poet, I dwell in a world that abounds in metaphors and similes. So in my way of thinking, it's as if we each come to this world with two sets of eyeglasses, and each morning we must make a choice about which set we will wear. Through the one set, we see the proverbial glass of water as half full. Whenever we wear these spectacles, we seek beauty everywhere, and consequently, we find beauty everywhere. We see the opportunities in the struggles, the blessings in the turmoil, and the uplifting possibilities in every challenge. I named this pair of glasses the lens of vibrant energy, L-O-V-E, the love lenses. Through the love lenses, we find a sense of happiness, momentum, and purpose, even in times of trouble. Through the second set of spectacles, however, the glass of water is always seen as half empty. The troubling realities of our world are viewed everywhere in their most worrisome detail. Complaints, regrets, and resentments consume most of the waking hours. I call this pair of glasses the lens of stolen time, L-O-S-T, the lost lenses. An overuse of the lost lenses can blur our vision, causing us to miss opportunities for happiness. Sadly, the lost lenses can prevent us entirely from appreciating the simple pleasures that give meaning and beauty to our lives. So I think that especially in this time of COVID-19, we need to reach for those love lenses as much as possible and choose a perspective of hope and faith in the future. It reminds me also a little bit about a native legend you may know about the story of the two wolves. And it concerns a grandfather talking to his grandson. And he's saying, inside of me, there are two wolves, and they are constantly battling one another. One is full of joy and hope and beauty and love and kindness, and the other is dark and angry and bitter and full of resentment and pessimism and everything that is negative. And they are at war within me, and they will be at war within you too, and within every person in this earth. And so the little boy asks, well, grandfather, which one wins? And the grandfather answers, the one you feed. I always thought that was a very succinct way of describing the effort that we must take to be able to see things in their most positive light. And perspective is also very much influenced by our experiences in the world. And that's why I think that the best we can do is speak our truth. And we don't always have to follow someone else's truth. For example, with my dad, I would have a different perspective on what to counsel young people. I would be less concerned about security and more offering them advice based on something I read once that I thought so beautifully exemplified what I think. It was actually written by Howard Thurman, who is an African American author and poet, a theologian, and a civil rights leader. And he said, "Don't ask what the world needs. Ask what makes you come alive, and then go do it. Because what the world needs is people who have come alive." So I think that we need to always listen to that voice in our hearts that guides us to our true purpose. And we can not change the music of our soul. I read that somewhere and I thought, that's very apt. We cannot change the music of our soul. And where that music plays most beautifully is on an instrument called the heart. So we don't always have to follow someone else's advice, but we do have to respect their right to have their perspective. And I think if we can do that, then we all move and evolve closer to the fulfillment of how happy we can be in this life and how good and kind we can be to one another. I think one of the reasons I loved so much living at my Shalimar, which I've described earlier, is that in that setting I did feel truly alive. I felt very awakened. And because of that, I began to regard the last period of our years there as a parent-child relationship. And it was often symbiotic, as they are. Sometimes I felt like the parent, sometimes I felt like the child. And so the house was like a parent when it provided the shelter and the safety for me to pursue my writing, to produce 5 CDs, and also to create my website. And it was a really very special time for me. But it was also a time of reckoning. And in those last few years, my friend Jim and I had fulfilled the commitment we made about the 3-year agreement, and it was becoming more obvious to us that for a number of reasons, we had a relationship that was for a reason and a season, but not necessarily a lifetime, and that it was time to move on for both of us. So we made the difficult decision to sell the property. And then the house began to feel very much like a child to me, and I was a parent who had to give that child up for adoption, simply because I knew that someone else could take better care of it. Without a steady income, there was just no way that I could give that property even my share of the expenses. So we decided to initially try to sell it by owner. And I can remember taking a couple for a tour of the property, and I was walking with the woman back towards the beautiful weeping willow trees at the back of the property. And I heard her say, "Oh, well, these trees would have to go. I've never liked willows. They're such a dirty tree, aren't they?" And I just was silent and thinking in my mind, no Shalimar for you. And it was just so important to me that I find somebody that would take care of that property and love it the way I had. So ironically, the next people that came along, as we walked towards the trees, the woman said, "Oh, there are weeping willow trees here." She said, "I just love them. They're like churches to me." So I'm thinking in my mind, okay, check that box. But as it was, there were other factors that didn't make the property suitable for them. So it actually took a long time took 4 years to sell that amazing place. And a lot of it had to do with the market at the time, the fact that there were so few, in my mind, comparables to determine what to list it for. But eventually we did find the couple that I think were guided there because it really was for them, ticked off a lot of their boxes. And I think that they were a good couple to have the property and also to become part of that community. So now I'm in a real state of transition, but I'm okay with that because I've discovered that in the transition state, we gather in some way different resources to prepare us for the next big wave that's going to take us to a new shore. And some of that also reminds me of something I read that said, when the heart weeps for what it has lost, the spirit laughs for what it has found. And what I have found will make its way into future CDs, into future videos, and maybe not CDs, because I guess that technology is kind of outdated now, but I'll find a way to share it. And I actually have a channel now on YouTube, and all of these videos are on that channel. And so you're welcome to visit them anytime you might like to hear these ideas again. And apparently you can also subscribe and receive notifications so that you would know when something new was uploaded. So I'm going to leave you today with two pieces of writing. One was from a woman named Dorothy Nell MacDonald. And this passage came to me in a card many years ago, but I committed it to memory because I thought it was such a beautiful way of expressing what we all wish for one another. And she says, I do not wish you joy without a sorrow, nor endless day without the healing dark, nor brilliant sun without the restful shadow, nor tides that never turn against your bark. I wish you love and strength, faith and wisdom. I wish you goods, gold enough to help some needy one. I wish you songs, but also blessed silence, and God's sweet peace when every day is done. And the second is some concluding words from the CD, the Carpe Diem Chronicles, where I suggest that may we look often to the sky for reminders of our many blessings. May we celebrate all the vibrant colors of our human emotions as gifts from the universe to delight our senses and to teach us wisdom. Like the sun, may we be the light in someone else's darkness. Like the moon, may the phases we pass through bring us closer to the ultimate fulfillment of our purpose. Like the sunrise in the morning, may we greet each day as a new beginning filled with divine grace. And like the sunset in the evening, may the light of our day's journey bring to the world a vision of peace. And wherever your life's journey takes you, I hope that you will all each have safe passage.